Hi there folks, Nova24 here. So I'm here today to present my review, finally, of DoveTail Games Flight School. So DoveTail Games Flight School released just over a month ago. Um, I know it's taken me a long time. Actually, no, we're pushing almost 2 months ago now. I know that you guys were expecting me to do a review video of this a lot sooner, and I'm going to explain why I have it in a moment. But I'm going to give everyone a chance because this is going to be a long form review, so we're going to be covering a lot of ground in this. But also, before we get started on the actual review, I want to talk about some of the reasons why it's taking me so long, and how I approach this. So it's a bit of a self-analysis video as well as much a review video. But for those of you who are here just for the review, that's cool, no worries at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link right about here somewhere. Yep, just about there. That's going to be for the start of the actual review of DoveTail Games Flight School, and then I'm going to put a review link right about there. Yep, still working out this whole video vlog camera thing. I've got a link there that's going to be to the actual, just the summary right at the end, because I know those of you who have been watching me for a while know I tend to waffle a bit, and as I said, this is a long form review. It's going to go into a lot of depth with this one, so if you are looking just to cut yourself a bit of time and you want to get straight to the nuts and the bolts of it, absolutely go to the cut to the end. Or if you're wanting to watch the whole long form review but don't want to hear me waffle about why it's taking me so long to get this video out, then just go for this one up here. All right, cool. So off you go. For those of you who are going linking, go. All right. So that's probably now got rid of probably about 2/3 of you. So for those who are left, thank you very much. I'm not sure why you're sticking around, and kind of partially, not even sure why I'm doing this, but I did want to explain to you, especially for those, because I've been, as some of you know, well, when this video is being made, I recently went to Flight Sim Con 2016, which was absolutely amazing time. And quite a few people actually asked me, why haven't I done the review video yet? I did the preview series, I did the preview set of videos of the alpha release of it before it actually went live, and that's fine. And thanks to DoveTail Games for providing the review copy of that, the alpha copy of that, so I could play around in it before it got released. And then people were a bit surprised when I didn't come out with an actual, day one release, actual full-fledged review video. And I kind of don't particularly like doing day one release videos because I know there's always patches and whatever changes, and sure enough, DoveTail Games Flight School was no exception. We had a few patches come out afterwards. Then this video, okay, so we're releasing this video today, but I've done this review video 8 times, and 8 times I've scrapped it and thrown it out, because this is actually a really hard title to review. It's incredibly difficult, because I'm not the target market, and most likely probably those of you listening to me rabbit on right now probably aren't going to be the target market for DoveTail Games Flight School either. Flight School is designed for people who have never flight simmed before. For those of us who've been doing it for quite some time, in my case the better part of 20 years, this is actually really hard, because there are things that we expect and things that we wanted and things that we want in the new flight simulator and whatever that we're not going to find in Flight School, as you guys will find out shortly as we go through the actual review video. So this is why it's been really hard to do, because every time I found myself doing the review video, I found myself going off on a tangent, because it was like, oh, but this or but that and whatever, and it's like, and then I had to pull myself up and go, we are not the, or I am not the target market, and a lot of flight sims out there are not the target market either. This is about building a journey. So I'm not going to review any, leak any spoilers, whatever, for the actual review. You're going to have to watch the rest of that yourself. But as I said, this is one of the reasons why it's taking so long, and the reason I think actually I've just figured out in my head why I'm saying this to you guys, and I do hope those of you who watch it and take it on board, is keep an open mind while you're watching this review video, because as I said, this is Flight School. It is not Flight Simulator 11. It's not the actual full DoveTail Games Flight School. It's something completely different from that. So bear that in mind while you're watching this review, while you're watching me walk through it, and indeed if you get it yourself. Just bear that in mind. So I want you to do that. All right, cool. All right, that's my little wrap up done. Just saying why it's taking me so long to the video. So believe me, I tried to do this video quite a lot, and I just could never get it down right, but I think I've got it right now. I think. I guess you guys will let me know in the comments and whatever down below. Alright, well, without any further ado, let's get on with the review video. Alrighty folks, so here we are inside our DoveTail Games Flight School. So here we are ready, settle in, sit back and ready yourself for a long form review. So we're going to go through a lot of aspects in this in quite a lot of detail. We're going to be doing a couple of the flight lessons, we're going to be doing one of the missions, we're going to be going through several different airports, several different things to show off all the different parts of DoveTail Games Flight School. So yeah, as I said, for those of you who were expecting something short and sharp, you could probably cut straight through to the end. I'll pop a link here so you can cut straight through to my summary part of my review. But yeah, this is going to be a long form review, so we are going to be looking at quite a few things today. Helps if I set up my freaking controls. Ow. Alrighty, so the first things first, let's get going with some settings. So, well, actually, no, let's do the menu navigation on the top here. So, when you first log in, you'll be greeted with this beautiful splash screen here. Nothing too fancy about it. You've obviously got, starting from the top here, we've got the exit up the top there in the top left if you want to, when you want to quit. Top right is your pilot profile. So this is the profile that you create when you first create the when you first log into the sim. When you first log into the sim, it goes you through various different things where you enter in your name, where you enter in if your email address, and whether or not you want to be kept in touch with any updates with DoveTail Games Flight School and related products. And just a random beep there in the background. So yeah, you could go through, create your profile. It also allows you to set your home airport. You choose a country, it'll default to pretty much like the most popular or most well-known, either the capital city or most well-known city for that country. Yeah, so FYI guys, yeah, it's not the capital always, because, you know, Australia, it always picks Sydney. You know, Sydney's not the capital. Funnily enough, it's really not. Anyway, so you go through, but you can customize your home airport to your actual home airport if you wish. And then down here along the bottom, we've got the first one, of course, flight training, learn how to fly, which is, you know, the whole premise of flight school. From there, we go into missions, where you can put some of your newfound skills to use, and free flight, where you can fly on any of the 24,000 something airports that were in the original Microsoft Flight Simulator X. So yes, it is still using the database from that, but we'll cover that off more in a moment. And then the cogwheels, of course, pretty much the universal symbol for settings. All right. We're going to start today in settings, because we want to clarify a few things about this, and this is where we sort of this is where throughout this review, I'm going to do this review. I'm trying to balance it, and primarily it's going to be targeted to you, the new user, the user who doesn't really know what flight sims are. Not so much those who do, who have been flight simming for a while. I will put some, I will make some notes and some mentions of those who have been flight simming, and some of the things you may or may not like about what you'll see when you do that. So actually, that probably leads me to really good point before we actually get into that settings menu. I want to make this really clear. I am trying really hard to do this review video based on somebody who doesn't really flight sim. Okay, because there are a lot of things in here for those who have been flight simming for a while, and especially those who have got a lot of hardware already, where you are going to have some problems. So just bear that in mind. But for you, the new user, I will be primarily targeting towards this review video will probably be focused around you, because funnily enough, that's who you are the target market for flight school, not those of us who've been doing it for 20-something years. All right. So with that in mind, let's jump into settings. Okay. So now, first off, quick note for those of you who've been flight simming for a long time. Yes, these settings look very familiar. Yes, they are pretty much the ones straight out of FSX and P3D, FYI, just so you know. Alright, Moving on. Alright, so your first one that you get here is your air traffic control. So this is the air traffic control that you hear through your pilot radio, and also the units of measurement that is used throughout the simulator. So air traffic control basically is what people, keeps skies safe and keeps pilots in control and stuff like that, and you'll hear the voices coming over the radio when you tune in. Now the ATC is done a little interestingly in this one. It's not a set of pre-recorded voices that are done. It's it's a text-to-speech generator is what it uses, which is kind of interesting. So not sort of set of pre-recorded phrases which the previous which other flight sims use. This one is a text-to-speech generator, so which can lead to some interesting quirks as well. Anyway, so does it show the log in the ATC menu? Can you see all the other transmissions that the other aircraft have done? Auto open ATC window, so basically when they're talking to you, does it automatically pop open? You don't have to remember your call sign. Use pilot voice. Basically, when you transmit back to them, will you hear your voice transmitting back to them? And you can choose one of a series of voices. What was kind of interesting is there are more female voices than male. So hopefully we'll get more female pilots coming through. Hopefully, maybe, you never know. But yes, you can choose through and you can listen to them. Yeah, so we got just a quick silver there. He's a very interesting sounding one. Are we? Alright, I'm gonna go with, so we can go through all of those, but you know what, I'm gonna use Pilot 4. I like you. Okay, cool. Units of measurement. Unit of measurement is interesting. So just because the US likes to be different from the rest of the world, the US system, everything is feet and inches. So feet is altitude, and inches is your pressure, unit of measurement for pressure. The areas of like parts of Europe are mostly the former Russia and the Commonwealth of Independent States, and some other countries use a full metric system, so their altitude is done in meters and their pressure is done in millibars. The rest of the world, the majority of the world, uses a hybrid system, which is altitude is done in feet and pressure is done in millibars. So when you hear people talk about QNH and stuff like that, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about that, and it's your 1013 versus 299.92, which is the sea level pressure in inches. So there you go. I'm going to use the hybrid system because that's what I actually use in the real world. So real world pilots, you should probably think about doing that one. But US pilots, you can just stick with the US system. Alright, that's this first settings menu here. Alright, moving on, graphics. Alright. So during the initial alpha and beta, let's start at the top first. Okay, so resolution full screen. So it goes through your resolutions. Now your resolutions are based on a single monitor. If you are running a Eyefinity type setup, it will give you the Eyefinity resolutions as well. But otherwise, it will just give you the full screen resolution of a single monitor. Give obviously full screen on or off. Now, this next part was something that I was really excited to see when I got my hands on the alpha, but it was incredibly broken. Fortunately, and also when it was released, it was still incredibly broken. They've only fixed it in the last patch. So this video has been recorded in early July. So it only got fixed in like the last patch. So it took them 2 months after release before they fixed it. But they have fixed it now, and it does now work. So if you have like what I've got here, which is I have a 3-monitor setup, but I don't use an Eyefinity setup, mainly because Eyefinity and recording YouTube videos just doesn't work. It now actually makes proper use of it as a multi-monitor cockpit. Unfortunately, something I can't show off in the video. It would be really awesome if I could, but unfortunately I can't. But yes, it does actually work now, so this is actually a worthwhile setting to have. So that's a really great improvement and a really cool thing if you do have multi-monitors. Alright. Aircraft labels. So basically, this is a little set of text that pops up on top of AI traffic. So AI aircraft that might be flying around in the living world. So it is a living world. There are other aircraft present. The aircraft present are limited to only the ones that you fly in the game. So you only have AI traffic only consists of Piper Cherokees and Piper Cubs. We'll get to the aircraft in a moment, but that's it. There's no airliners. So those of you who are thinking you're going to see lots of airliners in this this flying around? No, not going to happen. But at least there is AI traffic. Now you can also you can set what information is shown when the labels pop up and whether the labels are on or off. So whether the tail number or the registration number is there, how far away it is from you, and the altitude that the aircraft currently is flying at. All right. Traditional sliders across the here. So your traffic density, how much AI traffic is going to be there. What's the weather settings? Like, how does the weather look? Does the weather, is it really is there lots of weather, very minimal weather, stuff like that, and how detailed is it? Scenery, how detailed is the scenery? How far away does the scenery load? Things like that. So kind of cool. Again, you can just slide these left and right, so all the way down to minimum. So obviously lower end systems, this is going to be where you're going to be sitting at. Higher end systems, 64-bit systems, you're going to be able to sit pretty comfortably up in the high end as well. Aircraft, the quality of the aircraft textures, basically this is sort of like your texture load, it's like how detailed the textures are, how detailed the models are. The textures are fully native 4K, so 4096 textures. So they are quite detailed as well. And this is just an overall graphics setting one as well here. Alright, moving further up, so you can choose your primary display device if you're running multiple graphics cards, whether you're using anti-isotropic filtering or not, and whether you're using anti-aliasing. If for those who are interested, if you're running things like NVIDIA cards or ATI cards, you can use your third-party like NVIDIA Inspector type programs to give you some extra settings as well, because the settings in here are fairly basic, but again, this is about an introduction, so yep, kind of basic is kind of to be expected. Alright, so as I said, big win on this one is the multi-monitor support natively actually finally works, which is really cool. Alright, so that's that one done there. Moving on across here, so we've got our infamous universal system for audio. This is, by the way, an issue that's just happened here on my screen. So my screen's just wigged out for a second here. And that's something I'm going to say it's a bug, but every time you sort of go through your graphics settings page, even if you don't change anything, it sort of resets itself and kind of freaks me out a little bit, especially for somebody who, records videos. So yeah, that's a bug, I'm assuming, still has been there since alpha, still hasn't been fixed. Doesn't seem to be too much of a problem, but it does give you a sort of a heart-stopping moment every now and again when you are looking at it going, oh my god, did I just completely break my sim? Anyway. So again, usual audio settings, primary audio device where most of your audio is going to come out of, voice audio devices. So this is where the audio from the radio traffic and the like will come from. Whether you want to set it come through your main speakers, or if you're using a headset like I am, whether you want to have come out through your headsets. So that's kind of a cool thing as well. Alright, and then from here you got your different audio settings, so things like your engines, so your engine sounds, how loud they are, cockpit sound, environment sounds, so like thunder, lightning, rain, wind, stuff like that. Voice, how loud the voice is. I'm actually going to turn this down because the voice in this is really loud by default. And any music that might be playing as part of missions and things like that. UI, the UI is basically the beeps. So as you run across any of the menu settings, it'll beep and sort of thump at you. You can turn that off. I strongly recommend that you do, because that gets really annoying really fast. Anyway, and otherwise you can also go through various different menu music that plays in the background as well. So there you go. Again, pretty basic setup, pretty basic stuff. There you go. Alright, I'm going to skip over controls for a second. We're going to continue on the rest of it, then we're going to come back to the controls. Alright, realism settings. So realism settings, again, stock standard stuff for those who've been flight simming for a while. You can sort of go through a series of default realism settings, so easy, medium, hard, or custom. The standard set that I run is, so you can turn your crashes on or off, whether you can collide with another aircraft, you can turn it on or off. Whether random flight failures may or may not occur, you can turn those on, and whether or not your pilot will feel the effects of G-forces. In the flight models over here, so basically this is how realistic it does, so and how much easier it'll be on you. So just your overall flight characteristics, P factor or propeller factor, your torque, the way your engine will influence your path of flight, your gyros, your stabilizations of your compass and your aircraft as a general rule, and your crash tolerance, so whether or not you're going to break something. Now you might notice that I've got this one all the way to the left. Now that's again, something that probably users for those who've been flight simming for a while have noticed. The reason why this is because the engine's based on Flight Simulator 10 technology and Microsoft Flight technology, where the higher you have that, the more CPU and computer resources that your sim will devote to working out whether you've crashed or not. Even if you've got nothing near you, what it will do is that it's every so many cycles it will check to see, has your crash box intercepted a crash box of something else, yes or no. And although, if it's only you and not a great deal of stuff out there, then it's not going to be a huge thing, but it's anything you can see. So that's, autogen, buildings, trees, other aircraft, the ground, the water, everything. So if you turn this down, then it's not going to do those cycle checks anywhere near as often, which means that your sim can devote more time and resources to actually allowing you to sim. So yes, I highly recommend that this was done. I hope this gets fixed down the track, but yeah, as I said, again, a lot of this stuff, for those who've been flight simming for a while, you'll recognize a lot of this stuff and be knowing a lot of these tips. So, but for those who are new, I do strongly recommend that you, whatever you set everything else to, always set this one to the lowest down there, because you should know if you've crashed or not. But yeah, the crash tolerance one, it just simply means that your sim will actually run smoother. Just FYI. All right. Moving on down, wrapping up the rest of the realism options. So with down at the bottom here, we've got engines. So auto mixture, which basically means that, so in layman's terms, the higher you go, the less oxygen you have. So you've got to change how much the mixture of fuel versus air that comes into your engine in order for it to burn efficiently. Turn this on, and your aircraft will automatically adjust the mixture as you change altitude. Turn it off, you've got to manually do it yourself. New users, suggest that one. Unlimited fuel, holdover from sort of gaming sim days. If you don't want to have to worry about fuel, you can turn unlimited fuel on. I don't know why you would, but sure, you can if you want. And stress damages engine. Basically, if you overstress your engine, so you run it at too high on RPM for too long, then you're going to break something, and you should potentially break something else in the airplane. So yeah, interesting to have that on. As I said, I fly with it on because I'd like to know how my engine handles. So yes, there you go. That is that one there. That's your realism page. Alright, so this is your pilot profile. So this is a pilot profile that we talked about before. So you initially first set this up when you first sign into DoveTail Games Flight School, when you first fire it up. Otherwise, you can go back and edit this later on and choose to change any details that you want. So you can change your home airport if you want. I've set my home airport to my home airport in real life, so Brisbane International, because the one I'm doing my flight training at isn't in the sim. But you can change your language as well. So there's only 3 languages fully supported at the moment, which is English, German, and French. And I don't think they've got plans anymore, but otherwise English is the international aviation language, so if you are into actually simming, probably not a bad idea to learn this one. Alright, there you go, and that wraps up that one. Nice and simple, that one. Alright, and last one, of course, we've got the game credits here, so go through, you can thank all the developers and all the people who worked on this, and it's actually surprisingly a fairly small team that was doing this, but yeah, anyway. There you go. So it's all the thanks and all the things there, and you can sort of see through all the people who've actually put some work into various parts of this sim as well. So there you go. Alright, now going back to the one we skipped over before, controls. Okay. Whether you're a new user or an existing user, this is where I start having some major issues. Okay. First things first, controller type. So if you're a new flight simmer who doesn't have a lot of hardware, this isn't possibly going to be such a big deal. So DoveTail Games Flight School supports a lot of hardware out there, so it supports a lot of the SciTech hardware, not so much the panels, but it does support the yokes, the flight sticks and stuff like that. It also supports Xbox 360 controllers, and again probably more for new users. It does, so if you're looking for a basic stick to get started, you can't go wrong with something like the Logitech 3D Pro. You really can't go wrong with it. It's a good solid base unit. But the problem starts coming in because this is so small, and a lot of games that when things are sort of longer than the space allowed, it sort of doesn't auto scroll. This doesn't. So in my case, for example, I use the X55 Rhino from Cytec. Now that's split into two units. So it's split into the stick with the twist rudder, and it's split into the throttles. Problem is, I don't know which is which. I don't know, and there's no way for me to find out because they both do the same stuff. So glaring problem here. So yeah, if you've only got one controller, then that's cool. There's no problem. But if you've got multiple controllers like I do, this becomes a major problem. And it can only be rectified, only resolved through actually sort of, testing it out in sim and stuff like that. So that's really frustrating and really, really annoying. Like, incredibly annoying. So, first major problem I've got with this. So, yes, there you go. Now, the calibration words are probably the wrong words to use. Yeah, it's the right words but the wrong words kind of thing. You don't actually calibrate your joystick, the position of your stick and your controls per se. What you do set is you set your null zones and how sensitive it is to the inputs that you make. So, long story short, when it comes to throttles and stuff like that, and I'm actually going to bump that up. I need to increase the null zone on the rudder axis. Drop the sensitivity a bit. Okay. So when it comes to the throttles, so I'm going to show these here. If you have a null zone anything higher than 0 with any third-party throttle equipment, you will not get full throttle response range. Despite the updates, that's still present. That's still a problem. So you have to zero your null zones if you are using something like Cytec throttles or things like that. Again, if you're just using a Logitech 3D Pro, you're good. You don't have a lot of these issues. But yeah, for those of us who use more higher end equipment, it becomes a bit of a problem. So yes, so there you go. So, but yeah, you can set your sensitivities for how sensitive is that one, and the null zone. As I said, the one I learnt was you need to set your rudder null zone to be quite high, and you need to set your engine throttle null zones to be zip. So yes, a bit of an issue with that anyway. Alright, and then you go through different all events. So basically all simulator events, we can break them up into just control services, engine systems, and instruments, blah blah blah. Alright, we're going to set this to all events. Alright. So we got that one. So the next step is you can go down through here and go through buttons and keys and axes. So you can assign different axes of your equipment to do different things in sim. Now you'll notice here that it says engine 1 through 4. Now at this stage, DoveTail Games haven't said of any announcement of any controls. Okay, actually let's go back here for a second. If you're just a beginner and you're just starting out, have a look. You probably don't need to mess with many of these settings. You'll probably be able to leave most of these alone, most of these to the defaults. The defaults actually aren't too bad if you're running just a single controller setup. They're pretty good. They're pretty straightforward. The manual that's included with DoveTail Games Flight School goes through with a sample joystick which looks suspiciously like a Logitech 3D Pro, and actually points out all of the controls and what they are. And look, they're pretty solid. For when you're getting started, you don't really need to mess with any of this stuff really. So this part now, for those of you who've been flight simming for a long time and might have some more equipment and stuff like that, part's probably going to be more for you. So yeah, you're going to have to go through and redo all your control remapping. You'll notice that yes, there is 4 engine 1 through 4, funnily enough, just like FSX does. However, at this stage at least, DoveTail Games haven't announced any intention to actually put anything more than 2 engine aircraft into this sim. We might see 4 in the future, but for now we're only going to see 2. I really hope they change the controls a lot between now and then, because just like we saw in FSX, you can't bind multiple throttles, engines to a single throttle, i.e. so if they ever produce something that's 4 engines and you've only got 2 sliders like I do, so I've got the HOTAS, so I've got the split throttle, yeah, I'm going to be doing something weird with the engines 3 and 4, so yes, anyway. Otherwise, a lot of the stuff, so stuff that only has like 1 or 2 axes and whatever, you're going to be fine with. And as I said, if you're using multiple bits of hardware, you just need to go through and reassign everything again. So yeah, sorry, you thought you got away with doing it, but yes, but you're going to have to go back and do everything again. Moving away from Axis, as I said, you got buttons and keys. Again, you go through and assign all your buttons based on all the different things that you can have. A lot of the stuff in here are controls that are carryovers from the DoveTail Games Flight School's legacy of, it is a lot of it is based on an FSX ESP engine, so you are going to see a lot of things that you've seen previously in those. So just yes, you will see these. Move on. That's what you have there. All right, cool. That pretty much covers off here to set controls and change assignments, for example. So what we'll do here, so let's go for example with buttons here. So flex, retract incrementally, so you highlight it. You can then choose however, so we'll go from right to left today. So from none. So this is how often it repeats if you hold the button down. So does it not repeat if you press and hold the button down? Does it repeat slowly? Does it repeat fast? Okay, so I think you probably would have seen as I was scrolling through before, my elevator, my pitch trim is a fast one, but something like flaps is none. To change assignment, you simply click change assignment, okay, and then you can either, so what you can do is you can go through, press a new button, okay, so that one, no, I don't want to do that one, so and it actually will warn you, this is actually assigned to something else, do you want to clear it, change it, whatever, I'll just go cancel on that one. Alright, or you can just delete the keyboard assignment, or you can delete the joystick assignment. There you go there, and of course the big always reset defaults button. So, for new users, pretty self-explanatory. For flight simmers who've been around for a while, you're going to find a lot of commonality here, you probably know it all. Unfortunately, FSU IPC does not work with DoveTail Games Flight School. Let's just move on. Move on. Just move on. Okay, alright. That wraps up the settings. And again, we've got when you leave the settings menu, so not only when you leave the graphics menu, but also when you leave the settings menu, you again have that screen flicker and it just freaks you out for a moment. Alright, so of course, the whole point of DoveTail Games Flight School is, of course, flying school. Now, that's why we have 2 flight schools at the moment, and we've got 2 aircraft. So to introduce those both at the same time, both the aircraft and the flight schools, let's go down to the left part of our menu here, and let's go into our flight training. So as you can see from the world map here, we've got 2 flight schools to choose from. So you've got one over here in the UK, and you've got one over here in the US. So we're going to start our flying training. So your initial flying training, which is going to be going for what's called a light aircraft pilot's license, or LAPL. For those outside of Europe, the equivalent for that in the US is your recreational pilot's license. In Australia, it's in the US, it's the sports pilot's license. In Australia, it's the recreational pilot's license. There you go, just FYI. Alright, so this one takes place at the Waltham Flying Club in England. So you get a little bit of a history about the club here, and it goes through sort of, about the airfield. So it's White Waltham Airfield. Privately owned airfield, looking quite nice, and from one of the scenery developers that's been working with DoveTail Games on this title here, and obviously for future developments in Future Sim, and maybe even some stuff for FSX Steam Edition as well. So you go through here. Now, flying training is a serious business. Like, yeah, it is, and this is where flight schools really sold itself, or where it tries to sell itself, is that it goes through the lessons and things like that. So this first license type, you get 6. Well, you get 5 lessons, and then you get your actual light aircraft pilot's license. So these go through some very basic things. Your takeoff, straight and level flights, how to climb, how to descend, and maintain control of your aircraft. By the way, throughout all these, turning onto headings, and how to do a proper approach and landing sequence to an uncontrolled airfield. Which you leverage on a lot of this when you go on to your private pilot's license, which is the one over in the US school. So these lessons here are really great lessons. Yes, they may seem like your tutorial levels of any sort of game out there, but this is actually where it's good, and where I have mixed feelings about this. So the content of the lessons themselves here are very important fundamentals, but I feel that sometimes they're a little lacking. Now, look, some of this basic stuff is covered in previous simulators as well, in their sort of lessons and missions and stuff like that in other simulators. But Flight School's really pushing itself as this is where you can do all this stuff. My problem with it is that this is kind of the only information that you get. But let's experience a couple of these lessons here. So we're going to do a lesson from here, and we'll do a lesson from the US school as well. So let's start with a lesson here from the UK one. Let's do the first takeoff lesson, because I think it's a good show off some of the scenery and the terrain as well. So essentially, you choose your lesson that you want to fly, and then you just down here click the one on the bottom right and click fly now. So this is where it sort of has its only problem. It sort of gives you this brief message of every student remembers their first takeoff. Well, that's cool. You give them your cub and you fly to 1,000 feet and level off. Okay, that's cool. But that's the only information you get, and I think that's a bit of a shame. You should have some more here. But let's listen to this.
Welcome to Waltham Airfield near London. This is said to be the largest grass aerodrome in the UK. The expansive field and historic buildings make for a timeless flying experience, as you'll soon discover. And the Piper Cub is the quintessential general aviation aircraft. I always tell my students, flying a Cub is real flying. Pilots have been learning to fly in Cubs at Waltham since before the Second World War. And that's what we'll be going up in today. This fantastic Cub has been prepared and fueled for our flight. Why don't you hop in? Let's get the engine started. First, I'll turn on the battery. Now, there are only two bits of information you'll need from the instruments during this lesson. Airspeed, or how fast we're going, and altitude, how high we are. Airspeed is displayed on the top left gauge. That's the most important instrument you'll use today, so get familiar with it. In this Cub, the airspeed is shown in miles per hour. Altitude is displayed on the instrument just below the airspeed. It's reading near zero since we're sitting on the ground. Alright, let's start the engine and go flying. Here we go.
Clear prop! Can you hear me okay? We can communicate over the intercom as long as you have your headphones on.
That's better. I've got mine turned up as you're a little quiet. First, let's check the controls and I'll explain their effects. Push the stick left, then right.
So this is the first time that you ever actually have any input with this one. Everything else is the controls are locked.
Good. This will roll the aircraft in the direction you turn. It's simple stuff and will all make sense once you try it out in flight. Next, gently push the stick forward and then gently pull it back. This will pitch the nose of the aircraft down and up. When you want to climb, raise the nose towards the sky by pulling the stick back. When you want to descend, lower the nose by pushing the stick forward. And finally, the rudder pedals. Pressing these moves the rudder to twist or yaw the aircraft left and right. It's the hardest control to understand, but you'll figure it out. To begin with, you'll probably only use the rudder pedals when we're on the ground. Pushing the rudder pedals will also move the tail wheel, and that's how you steer on the ground. Left rudder will turn us left, right rudder will turn us to the right. Since there's no control tower here at Waltham, we just broadcast our intentions over the traffic frequency. That way any other aircraft nearby will hear us, know where we are, and where we're going. Waltham Radio, Piper Golf Delta Lima, taxiing from Waltham Flying Club to runway 07. Okay, we're looking good. I'll taxi us up to the runway. We'll perform a normal takeoff and climb to 1,000 feet. I know this is all new to you, so I'll talk you through it. Now let's test the engine by performing a run-up. We always do this to reveal any problems before we leave the ground. I'll hold the brakes to stop us from moving. Gently move the throttle control all the way forward. Good. Now pull the throttle control back out. Good stuff. Now we can taxi onto the runway and line up for takeoff. White Waltham radio, Piper Golf Delta Lima, lining up runway 07. When you're ready, add a little power to start rolling.
So all of that so far was
Turn right
fairly
onto the
basic
runway
stuff.
And line up so the nose is pointed straight down the white dashed centre line.
And if you're new to the flight simulation kind of thing and new to aircraft, it's got some good information in it, but there's that, again, going back to what I said before, there's that nothing of that pre-flight briefing kind of information.
Use a little right rudder to tuck the nose into the right. Use the rudder to keep the nose pointed straight down the runway and get ready. Okay, full power. The tail will rise very quickly by itself. Start pulling back on the stick at 40 miles per hour. Fantastic, we're flying. Let the aircraft accelerate to 75 miles per hour. Keep full power for the climb, so control the airspeed by pitching up or down.
So yeah, first little lesson like this is fairly basic stuff. Just throttle forward and control the vertical.
Good. Hold 75 miles per hour with pitch and keep climbing. Gently push the stick to pitch the nose down and stop the climb. Fly level at 1,000 feet. Great. Our takeoff and transition to cruise is complete. Well done.
Okay, so fairly basic stuff, very important tutorial, things that are in there for the budding pilot. But as I said before, it really is lacking in the extras of, there was some good stuff in there, like things like, and little things in there that are going to be good for, your future sort of piloting skills. Things like, how you broadcast your intentions over the traffic frequency at uncontrolled airports. But it's just, it just seems to be, there's just with no other reading material to have, it sort of seems to lose a bit of the impact. The other lessons for the light aircraft pilot's license go through your basics of flying. So your straight and level flight, climb and descends, turn headings, the approach and landing. The approach and landing one is actually pretty good. Is probably one of the best lessons of this one, because it goes through a lot more things about how to manage your approach and manage your speed when you come into final for landing. So yeah, overall, great lessons. Think that was an opportunity missed for some of the extra ground school type information. I think that was a little bit missed, but anyway. Alright, well, that's the light aircraft pilot's license sort of lessons. It's the very much the basic stuffs, the very much the basics of sort of first starting to fly. Your skill test is essentially going for your light aircraft pilot's license. And that's pretty much, you do everything that you feature in the lessons there, 1 through 5, and put them all in one with minimal input from your instructor. Alright, well, let's return back now to our world map, and let's have a look at our other flight schools. So this is the second flight school that's included as part of the base package of DoveTail Games Flight School. So this is Eagle Pilot School in Arizona. So this one is where you take on a slightly more powerful aircraft, so you're riding in the second aircraft that's in DoveTail Games Flight School, the Cherokee 180. So this aircraft is more of your more traditional GA type aircraft. So low wing monoplane, single, reasonably powerful engine, and quite a common sight at various airports around the world. Now, obviously, as you can see here, there are more lessons with this one. Now, again, these lessons sort of are have good quality. There's good stuff in them, but at the same time, you also, again, it suffers from the same lack of extra information. All you get is this brief little blurb here. That's it. That's all you ever get in all the different lessons. So it can be, again, I feel that they've missed something here with that. Now, these lessons go a bit more deeper into some of while you're in flight, go into some of the more important parts about why you're doing what you're doing, but again, misses a lot of things. Probably one of the best lessons I think is actually the first lesson here, which is the traffic pattern, which actually teaches you how and why a traffic pattern is flown, which is actually really cool and really important if you are wanting to sort of go into flight simulation and possibly even go into real world aviation down the line. The great thing, though, about, and probably the one major point, the good point that I should actually point out here of both the last of the lessons and these ones here for the PPL, so the LAPL and the PPL lessons, is that these lessons are actually part of your lesson program when you do this in the real world. This is all part of it, so these lessons are exactly what you do when you go for these licenses in the real world. Obviously, and the things that the instructor asks you to do are exactly what a real world instructor would do. So as I said, it's just kind of a shame that obviously the research has gone into it to find out what to do. So why are we missing the documentation? I think it's a pretty hefty oversight. So yeah. Anyway, all right. What we're going to do is we're going to do a slightly different one. This one, we're going to do a emergency landing lesson. So this one's kind of a different one to do, which is kind of interesting. So let's do this one here. So we'll do this lesson today because again, these features, as I said, these lessons are actually really, really good, and even for those of us who've been virtually aviating for quite a while, or real world aviating for quite a while, these lessons are good and very important. So let's do this one today. We'll do the emergency landing one today. So again, as I said before, you're just missing out on the extra things of stuff like that. It's like, sometimes things go wrong and you'll need to make an emergency landing. That just there's nothing there.
I hope you brought your lucky hat today. You're about to actually perform an emergency landing. You have control. Hold a heading of 360 degrees and maintain 7,500 feet at 90 knots while I describe the maneuver. Ready to learn about emergency landings? All you need to know is ABC. A for airspeed, B for best field, and C for checklist, in that order. For airspeed, you want to maintain the best glide speed of 70 knots. This is very important. If you fly any slower or faster, you won't make it as far. Choosing the best field for landing is the next most important thing. Always turn into the wind to reduce ground speed, then choose a long open field with no obstacles, or even better, an airfield. When you've got best glide speed and the best field selected, run through the engine restart checklist. For now, continue on this course, 360 degrees. Maintain 90 knots and 7,500 feet. Good. Just keep flying straight and level like it's a normal flight. I have a sneaking suspicion something bad might happen to your engine shortly.
Evil instructor.
In reality, you'll never expect an engine failure, so a fast reaction time is critical. It's a good practice to always keep your eye out for an emergency landing spot. Paved airports or grass or dirt airfields are the best. Always try to notice where the nearest ones are. Oh, look at that. The engine has failed. Okay, don't panic. Just pitch and trim for 70 knots. Once airspeed is under control, turn into the wind and start looking for a suitable landing area. The wind is blowing from the northeast from 030 degrees.
Oh, how about that? There happens to be an airstrip just
You're
about
above
down
best
there.
glide speed. Slow to 70 knots. Be sure to pick a spot with plenty of room. Or, better yet, an airfield.
I think that looks like an airfield about 030, doesn't it?
Always expect there to be fences at the edges of fields. Be sure to keep an eye out for any power lines.
So we got power lines down there, so yeah, okay. So as I said, like the content of this mission, as you can see, in this lesson is actually really good. So it teaches you things like yes, it reminds you what the best glide speed is and stuff like that. But it would have been nice to have all that stuff in the pre-flight briefing as well. That would have been good. Oh,
Be sure to pick a spot with plenty of room. Or, better yet, an airfield.
good.
At this point, you can use flaps if you need them. Just remember to lower the nose to maintain 70 knots. This will bring your touchdown point closer, and can be useful if you think you're high.
And no, he's not talking about the California type high.
Here comes the ground. Let's pop the doors to make sure we can get out. Try to touch down as softly and slowly as possible.
Oh, that was a bit rough.
Wow, you landed on the runway. Great job.
Possibly might need me on a
Touchdown
carriage.
facing the wind. See, this reduces your ground speed and makes an emergency landing more survivable. Your touchdown was smooth, so you avoided a potential landing gear collapse. Good use of the flaps to reduce the ground speed at touchdown. That was perfect. Well done.
So that is a good quality lesson. As I said, yeah, the actual content of this lesson was great. The skills it taught you and got you to work through are great skills to have. It teaches you a lot about the aerodynamics and how to land properly as well, not just to land in an emergency situation, but you remember always land into wind. A lot of great content there. It just again missed out by the fact that there's just no ground school, there's no extra information for you to go away with after the lesson and anything like that. So it's such a shame. It's such a shame. As I said, the quality of these lessons are quite good. The content is great. It's just, it feels to me like it's let down by this lack of information here and the lack of no further reading to have included with it. So look, overall, I think that the flight school lessons are as I said, I think it's just I sound like a crack record here. I really do, but I just really want to get it across is that if you're moving into this genre for the first time, if you're looking at actually simulating real world flight and lessons and seeing if flight simulation is going to be for you, these lessons are actually really, really good quality. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any extra ground school, any extra reading material on what it's like in the real world and things like that. I suppose you can always argue that that's what the internet's for. But these lessons are a great practical way of actually putting some of the things you may or may not have read, or would like to go on to read later, or may have read somewhere else. A great way of putting them into practice. For those of us who've been flight simming for a while, though, the lesson content, the extra stuff, we probably don't need as much because we've probably seen, and experienced a lot of it and read a lot of it ourselves. But the actual content of the lessons is still not bad. and it's kind of it's kind of worth doing as a refresher course, because I think a lot of us sometimes forget some of the basic stuff, power off stalls, and steep turns, managing an aircraft with steep turns that's not autopilot and it's full steam driven, like that's actually quite challenging. That can be quite challenging, and these lessons have proved a great refresher for you. So I think the lessons here, particularly in this private pilots lesson section, are a great set of quality lessons that is beneficial for both people who are just wanting to test the waters and see if the simulation genre is for them, the flight simulation genre is for them, and for those of us who are well established in it, still not bad lessons to have. All right. That wraps up our lessons, though. I do want to touch on one final thing about the lessons. You notice that in both the lessons you have a check ride, so where you actually get your license certificate. So we're going to duck up here to the top here, our qualifications. So each of these stars obviously represents each one of the lessons and then your final check ride. What's interesting here, though, is that this one here, so this is your check ride here and these are all your lessons. What's interesting here is this part in the middle here. So this is where you actually have to accrue solo flight time. And now that is in free flight. So you can't just bang through all the lessons and cut straight to the skills test and the license. It doesn't work like that, because just like in the real world, you have to get some extra time, some certified time just in the aircraft flying around. So this is actually a really nifty little input here, and I really appreciate it, because it's sort of, again, it marks that demarcation between a gamer and someone who's in it for the simulation. Because if you're in it, if this was just pitched as just a straight game, then you'd be able to do all these in one sitting and go straight to the skills test, bang, done. But this DoveTail Games Flight School actually forces you to actually put what you've learnt into practice and actually get some time in sim practicing and flying around doing what you've actually learnt before you can take the skills test. So I think that that's a really cool idea, and I think it's really well done. So yeah, just something, again, just to separate the gamers from the simmers. Nice little touch, that one. So, but it's still accessible for everyone, so I like it. Alright, so let's wrap that one up there. Let's move back now to the main menu, and let's continue having a look on the bottom here. Alright, so now that we're continuing on from that, we'll continue moving across the bottom here. So the next one is, of course, missions. So you get a series of missions included with this as well. So you get a variety of different missions, whether they be from conditional-based ones, conditional or challenging scenario-based ones. You've got like story-based one. These three here is story-based ones, and they're color-coded based on difficulty. So basically, green is easy, red is hard, and blue is intermediary. These range from a variety of different ones. So these ones here, you're running an air taxi service up in Alaska. So you get to ferry an adventurer around, and you've got some time pressure to do it in and things like that. This one here, you've got to be able to manage an aircraft that's iced up, and you've got to essentially got to dead stick it in. This one here, you've run out of fuel because you didn't fuel it up properly, so you've got to steer it in so you get into landing just in the nick of time. These three here are kind of interesting. A story-based one. You don't do the full journey. You just sort of do segments of the journey. You start at an airport here and you get to like a cruise point, and then you sort of have to reach an airport with challenging conditions for these last two. Basically, the story is you're ferrying an aircraft from the US to the UK. Kind of interesting, kind of cool. And this last one here is one I'll show you here as well, which essentially is another emergency landing scenario one, where you've got to manage an engine that's malfunctioning. So these missions, again, a variety of difficulties challenge you to do various things, whether they be navigation, or weather, or a little bit of everything. So yeah, these are kind of interesting and kind of well done. So let's have a look at one of the missions now as well. So we'll have a look at Overpowered, because this gets to see off the third of the higher detailed airports that are present in the sim. So of course, you got the White Waltham, you've got the Eagle Pilot School over in Arizona as the high detailed airports. You got Prescott, but you've also got one over here in Germany as well at Koblenz Airport. So let's do this one. So again, mission info kind of thing, very minimal information about it. Your situation is sort of, you get a one-liner, that's it. Kind of disappointing, but anyway. Alright, let's fly the mission.
Cherokee November 109er Sierra Hotel is abeam the numbers, runway 24.
Cherokee 9 Sierra Hotel, you are cleared to land on runway 24.
So you get a nice picturesque view of the German countryside as you're flying along.
What the? This throttle, it keeps creeping up.
Because the easy way to manage that
Mayday,
is
Mayday, Mayday, Cherokee 9er Sierra
shut the engine
Hotel is
down.
declaring an emergency. My throttle was stuck and I had to kill the engine.
Cherokee 9 Sierra Hotel, you are cleared to land on any runway. Emergency services are being notified.
So again, this is where some of that lesson stuff and the training stuff comes into play. So we know aim for the numbers there. Flare it. So although you don't have to do, the flight training before you do the missions, it's, the mission content does use what you learn in flight school. So, it is, a good idea to do your flight school first before you do your missions.
Cherokee 9 Sierra Hotel, please exit the aircraft if you are able. Emergency services are on their way.
Short, simple mission, but what was in there was elements of the traffic pattern, because you were entering the traffic pattern when you start the mission, and it was how to handle power offs, to make sure you do avoid a stall, and how to actually do a power off landing, emergency landing. So, that's what I like about the missions. The missions actually, yes, there is like individual stories or sequence of stories, but they use elements of what you actually learn in flight school. So there is a point to these missions. They're not just in there just for, just for fun and whatever. Well, they kind of are, but yeah, they're actually in there to give you something. You actually learn something from them, or put something that you have learnt into practice. So yeah, I think that's a really, these missions are quite well done. The taxi ones are a sort of related series of missions as well, and quite interesting. These ones are quite challenging. The one thing that probably I would point out, though, is that particularly with Scud Runner, one of the things that is vital for you to know is not actually taught in flight school. So, pro tip, little hint to everybody: carburetor heat. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, but otherwise, a nice balance of learning how aircraft, of actually putting into practice what you've learned. So overall, the mission range, it's a small range, but I think they're quality missions and worth the experience. Alright, so of course this pretty much brings us to the last part of this review, which of course is the free flight. So the free flight we're going to do a couple of test flights, we're going to do a couple of different scenarios, we're going to explore it in quite a lot of detail now. So let's jump into it. So as you saw from the 2 flight schools, we have 2 aircraft included with flight school. The third of course is on the way, but we have 2 included at the moment. So you have the first one that you have is the Piper Cub, so the one that we got a light aircraft pilot's license in at Waltham Flying Club. Now, of course, down the bottom here, you do have some options. You can load a flight, a pre-save flight. That's an aircraft scenario, the whole 9 yards. So viewplanes, that can I just say annoys me, because this is by a UK-based developer, and they're calling it planes. It is not a plane, it is an aeroplane. A plane is what a carpenter uses. Anyway, moving on. Sorry, just personal beef there. So this gives you this screen so you can choose which aircraft to use. So of course we've got the Cub here, and the little paintbrush shows you the different liveries that you can actually explore. So the Cub ships with 4 liveries, so a white one, a beige with a bit more red in the wing one, a all over red one, and the Waltham Flying Club one. In terms of the Cherokee, which is of course the second aircraft that we got, the PA-28, you get a range of 5 liveries with this one. So you get the GBRGI, so a British one. You get a sort of a blue and grey American one. You get another American one, but it's in the green, and you get a red and white stripe one, which is red stripes go faster, though not the Cherokee, it just doesn't go that fast anyway. And of course, you get the Eagle Pilot School one as well. So these are your different aircraft. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the Cub up for a run first. So we're going to select that one. So we're going to select our aircraft. Now you may notice up the top here it says aircraft hangar. So this is where you start. So you start in the hangar, and you notice that at the bottom there it's got the Brisbane International. So it's got my your home airport that you set. So of course it's picked up my home one. So here we are. So the first step is, of course, that we now have to plan our flight. So when you first come over to the flight plan screen, as we saw before, you go to your home airport. So, yep, my home airport, Brisbane International YBBN. I think we might go for a fly somewhere else, I think, for our first little fly in the Cub, shall we? So, but before we do that, let's have a look at the actual sort of what we get here in the map. So, as you can see, you get the whole world. You get the whole world. It's not just you're not just limited to a small geographic area. You get the whole world, which is what we want as simmers. That's what we want, and it's what And as somebody who's who's learning the simulation world for the first time again, you want to be able to challenge yourself by going to some places that maybe you wouldn't normally go to, and be able to challenge yourself in environments and terrain that you wouldn't normally come across. Now, you can see across here that we've got airports dotted all over the map. So there are like 24,000 airports, but basically for those who've been simming for a while, it is the old FSX database. So that's probably one thing that is a little disappointing with this one, with Flight School, is the fact that the database isn't accurate. The database is a 2005 database of terrain and of airports, which means that any airport that's come out that's been built since then, or conversely been closed since then, those changes aren't going to be reflected here in Flight School, which is a bit of a shame, and something that we all earnestly hope will be fixed for when the actual full flight simulator comes out. Now, probably before we get started with actually planning a flight, let's talk about some of the things that we see here and how you go about planning a flight. So, along the bottom here, you can see that there are a series of different of icons and sort of like the map legend. So what you got here is you got an example that blue airports are airports that are controlled, so i.e. that have a control tower, and magenta airports are ones that are not controlled. Now, airports that have the open circles, is just the white circle in the center, they are soft field airports, so there's no hard runways. Ones with the vertical lines, or the sort of the bunch of 3 lines together, that shows they've got at least one hard surface runway, so asphalt, concrete, bitumen, something like that. What you may also see is you also see an icon here that says like a little crosshairs on the background of it. So what that means is facilities. Now, facilities basically means the fact that it's got fuel. That's pretty much it. That's all it means. Is there is fuel available for you to refuel your aircraft should you need it. Now, further on, you've also got then further on here along the right. You've got some icons that show. You got yellow shows road, major roads, and red shows railway lines. So maybe we'll see a crossover of train sim and flight simulator in the future. I don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But it's useful to see. It's also good for planning VFR flights because you can know if you need to follow roads or railway lines to where you're going. You've also got a set of navigational data, navigational beacon information here as well. So you've got symbols for VORs, VOR DMEs, VORTACs, and NDBs. So VOR is your most common sort of form of radio navigation. VOR DME means that there's a VOR, so your location, sort of azimuth and direction, and it's co-located with DME or distance measuring equipment. So essentially, there's a gauge that's in both the Cub and the Cherokee's cockpit, which allows you to see how far away you are from an actual ground station. So, but a lot of VORs do have are co-located with DMEs, but not all. Vortac's an interesting one. It's an interesting decision. I'm curious as to why this is actually here, because Vortac is a combined VOR and TACAN. Now, TACAN is essentially a military version of a VOR DME, where it uses a slightly different frequency set. But it can still be tuned using normal frequency bands. It's done using presets, and so it's interesting that it's there, especially considering that there's no aircraft that can use TACAN that we have available as yet. So maybe there will be something in the future that will. NDB, non-directional beacons, they're more traditional, sort of older style navigation aids, which are fast disappearing, but are actually quite common in Eastern Europe. So there you go. Alright, so what we might do is we might take a quick flight around Paris, I think is what we might do. So we're going to zoom in here. There we are. So we might, what shall we do? We'll depart from Paris Orly. We'll head over the beautiful city of love, and then head over to here to the Veldsy Air Base. So, flight planning. Flight planning is actually one of the things that's actually incredibly easy. It's actually almost too easy in flight school, and something that I'm really impressed with and I really enjoy. So it's a great. It is actually. I'm almost lost for words because it is so good and so simple and so easy. So, all right, literally, this is what you do to create your flight. You click on the airport you want to start from. So we're going to start from Orly. Okay, cool. So we click on Orly. Excellent. Now you got this so left click on Orly. Now you've got this little line that comes out here. So you can then left click this in on another airport, or you can left click it on the map. So what you can do is what should we do? We'll click here. I think the Eiffel Tower's around about here. Click there, and that'll place a waypoint there. And then you can drag it out here, and we're going to be going to. Actually, I'm going to show you this. So let's say I click on this one. Okay, right. Okay, and I go, oh, okay, didn't want to do that. So what I can do instead is, so I can then click on the airport I want to go to do that one. So left click again on that. Yep, cool, done. So I've finished my flight plan. I right click, and that closes the flight plan loop. Excellent. But I go, you know what? I don't want to go to East Lenoble. I don't want to go there. So all I need to do is go up here and simply click the cross, and it deletes it from there. Unfortunately, it also deletes any intermediary waypoints as well. That's a little annoying, but overall, it's a really simple left-right click and it's done. It's really, really simple. So we're just going to quickly replan that. So we're going to go from Orly, click on Orly. Nope, okay, there you go. We have to remove it completely. So up from there, and we're going to go up here. And then we're going to go to the airbase there. Done. And right click to end that. So it's actually incredibly simple to do a flight plan. It really is. Like, that's just disgustingly easy. It really is. And if you go, okay, maybe I want this waypoint to be moved a little bit. Yep, that's fine. You click and drag it around the map. So you can click and drag it anywhere around the map and then let it go and you're good. How easy is that? Like, that is so easy and so cool to do. It's just easy, and it's got this little animated line showing the direction of flight. That is so simple and so visually intuitive. I really like it. It actually took me a while to figure it out because it is so simple and so obvious and so simple. So, DoveTail guys, you did a good job with this one. You really did, and that's quite impressive. Now, before we get too far into it and some of these things, I want to show you these two buttons down here. So, save plan and load plan. So, what you've got down here is that you can save this. So I can save this flight plan so I can recall it later on if I want to do that. Or I can load a flight plan that I've previously saved. Interesting enough, these are saved in a PLN format. So for those who've been simming for a while, it's the same format that FSX-P3D can read. It can save and read as well. And yes, it does read them. It does read them. It does read PLN files from other flights. Just a little point. Anyway, so yeah, you can save a flight plan if you go a particularly good flight plan and want to recreate it then in the future, or you thought it was particularly good, or it's good practice and you want to be able to redo the route in the future and not have to re-click it every time. You can actually just save it as well. So as I said, a very simple, intuitive interface for actually doing your flight planning. Really, really nice, that one. Now down the bottom here as well, what you'll see here is you'll see a little bit of a sort of a summary of your flight. So it gives you sort of your outbound headings. It gives you approximate speed, even though we're not going to be doing that kind of speed. So the speed's not necessarily accurate based on the aircraft you're flying, but it gives you your distance that you're going to be traveling and the estimated flight time that that flight's going to take you. So that's good information to have. All right, so we'll move back along here to the other characters we've got across the bottom here. So on the bottom here in the far left, we've got the little sun icon. So this is where you can set your time, day, and like the season of that one. Okay, so we're currently, because we're going to be flying this 1st of July. So currently we've got the time. So the local time is 10 o'clock in the morning. Now you can from here you can either change the hour up and down. Now, I have a slight problem with this, the fact that you can't type any numbers. You actually have to use the up and down arrows. That's a little frustrating. It would be nice to be able to just type in some digits. Unfortunately, you can't do that. You can also change the month, the year, or you can simply click on a date as well once you've set the month. So to set the date, so you change the month up here, okay, June, July, and then you just change the date just by clicking on the day there. Now in terms of over here further on the left, so you can cycle through the presets. So you can choose daytime, dusk, night, dawn. We might actually do a dawn flight. I think I like the idea of doing a dawn flight for this one. We'll do it like right before 6 o'clock in the morning. I think no, we'll do it at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock in the morning sounds like a pretty good time. You can also change you can change the season here as well. So it just goes through the fall. So summer, fall. That annoys me, by the way. I know it's called fall in America, but the rest of the world doesn't call it fall. We call it autumn. Just FYI. So that annoys me a little bit. But anyway, holdover from the FSX days. So you can change it through fall, winter, spring, and of course into summer here. So there you go. Alright, so yeah, it's pretty cool. I do like it. I think it's pretty easily done, well done. I think it's actually done quite nicely. Go back and reset our flight again. As I said, it's just annoying that you have to do the whole, up and down arrow thing. That does get a little frustrating that you can't just type a number in. It does get a little frustrating. So, anyway. Right, so that's that one there. So that's your basic time and season setup. Now, the other icon we have here as well is a weather icon. So there is unfortunately no way to link in real world weather. So they're not trying to connect any servers. They're trying to keep this a fairly self-contained one. So mixed opinions on that. As I said, this is flight school, so and people will say, oh, but you've got to learn to fly in any weather condition. Well, you can learn to fly in any weather condition. You can just pick the different weather themes that we've got here, which range from clear skies, fair weather, foggy, light rain, cold fronts moving through, building storms, heavy thunderstorms, light snow or heavy snow. So you can choose and fly in pretty much any type of weather. So is it necessary to have a real world weather continuously fed in from unreliable servers? You know what? I don't think so. I don't think it's a necessity, not for the new user, the new simulator pilot. I don't think it's a necessary thing to have. So anyway, we're going to do this one in fair weather conditions. Okay, so we're going to have that one, so it gives us that. Yep, so yeah, there we go. As I said, nice, simple, and basic for doing this one. Okay, so very nice, simple, and basic, very easy to manipulate, and very quick and easy to learn. Alright, without any further ado, let us get ourselves underway and get ourselves having a look at because as I said, we're taking up the Piper Super Cub out for a spin first. So let's have a look through the aircraft and see what we think. So to actually start your flight, click on the right hand button down here which says Log Plan. So it logs your flight plan and prepares you for takeoff. So we can see here that on your shift 3 will always bring up your GPS sort of avionics for whatever aircraft you're in. Now people will notice that there's a G1000 at the bottom there. That's I'm guessing that's going to be coming as part of the Diamond DA42 when it finally gets released. Alright, so when you join your free flight, you start in this pre-flight mode. Now this, before getting to the aircraft, this is actually going to be my first beef, right? One of my major beefs and my major problems with flight school. You probably may have, for those simulator veterans, you're probably going to guess what it is based on where we're positioned and also the fact that a certain option didn't come up for us during the flight planning. Anyway, so you come into this pre-flight section. So after you log your flight plan, you come to pre-flight. Pre-flight is essentially you sitting on the tarmac. The simulator is paused, looking at the external view. Right, cool. My problem with this is the fact that we are sitting on the runway threshold. We are sitting on the runway threshold. You do not start a flight sitting at the runway. You start a flight at parking, at a hangar, at your flight school. The fact that we are sitting here at the takeoff runway, I have a huge problem with that, an absolutely massive problem with that, because of the fact it's teaching you bad habits. So this is pitched at the new flight simmer. Trust me, you don't ever start a real flight sitting in your aircraft ready to go, engine started, at the runway. You don't. It doesn't happen. You don't just magically appear here. You have to go through startups and stuff like that. And we're going to get to some of that once we get into the cockpit. But this is a huge problem for me. Now, this is a second part of this problem as well, and we'll highlight this probably more when we jump over to the Cherokee. I'll choose some specific weather for that. So the problem that we have here is that no matter what weather conditions you set, you will always start at the lowest digit of runway. So it just basically picks the list of runways available for an airport and picks the top one, which is the lowest number. Whether that has anything to do with the weather conditions or not is completely irrelevant. It's just completely ignored, and that annoys me and is again really bad habits, and will catch a lot of you new pilots unawares, because there's a reason why aircraft take off into wind. Okay, there is actually a pretty genuine important reason for that aerodynamically. So trying to take off with the wind behind you is not fun, not easy, particularly in something like the Cub. So yeah, that's it's a huge issue and a huge oversight, and I really hope this gets fixed, because the other part of it is that, you know, if you do decide that, you know, flight simulation is for you and you want to go do more of it, then let me tell you, the fastest way to make a lot of enemies in multiplayer and in a community is to spawn on a runway. Like, it's the fastest way to piss a lot of people off and get yourself kicked out of any kind of community. Okay, it's a real fast, surefire way to do it. Okay, so yeah, massive issue with this. Very disappointed with DoveTail Games choosing to go this path, and you know, and not having you start at a parking spot. Now, I get that not all airports that are in the database are going to have parking spots. I get that, but we're at Paris Orly, for crying out loud. There's a lot of parking space here. Pick one. Just saying. And I know the parking spaces are in there because you can get told to go park by the in-sim air traffic control. So, just, I know they're there. I know they're in the simulator. So this was very poor choice. Alright, okay. Done on that. Done on that little thing. That's a major issue. But now, let's have a look at the model here of the Piper PA-18 Super Cub. Alright, so while I've been having my little rant there, we've been having a quick circle around the model. Let's have another quick circle around now. So, the model is absolutely exquisitely detailed on the exterior. It is absolutely exquisitely detailed. The way it's the lighting's done and the way it catches the light is absolutely incredible. It is absolutely beautiful. It really is. Incredibly impressed with the modeling and the detail that's gone into this actual the model of the Super Cub. Very beautiful. It has the animation wise, it only has it just has the door opening, so there's no animations for the engine cowling or anything like that, which is a little disappointing. But other than that, the actual look of the model is really good. It really is absolutely stunning. The high definition textures that have been modeled for this as well are absolutely beautiful and delightful as well. So yeah, definitely top marks for the exterior modeling. But of course, now let's have a look at the interior modeling. Alright, so to start our flight, we move down here to get out of pre-flight. We go down here to click down the bottom right here to begin our flight. And that unpauses the sim and moves us into the cockpit. Alright, so having a look at the cockpit here. So first of all, let's turn some lights on, because it is getting a little dark here, even though the red light hitting the cockpit doesn't really do a great deal. But anyway. Alright, so let's have a look down here at the sim. So, again, the detail is really good. We've got beautiful quality gauges here, we really do, so absolutely well done for that. No backlighting in the Cub for the gauges. But overall, the detail of the gauges is really well. These are all fully functional gauges as well. So you can reset your altimeter using the dialer, or using the default key as well. Full animations on your throttle and your mixture settings as well. However, a couple of things that it is missing. Actually, before I get into the things that are missing, let's have a quick look down here at the radio stack, and it actually might help us with some of the things that are missing as well and not quite so right. So, with your radio stack, how you can adjust the comm frequencies. So you've got your two dials here. So, for example, we'll mess around with the so we've got the comm radios on one side and we've got nav radios on this side. So messing around with the comm radio. So the idea is that you've got your whole and your parts of your frequency changes. So you've got your smaller one here is the part. So the smaller one here is supposed to be the part, but depending on where you hover your mouse, you may not actually catch it. You may catch the big one. So holding it out here, you've got your little one. Okay. Unfortunately, though, it pretty much only works in one direction, which is a bit of a shame because you have to. It isn't actually a proper rolling wheel. You've actually got to hold your mouse on one side or the other when you move your middle scroll wheel to actually be able to get it to go in the right direction that you want it to go. The back one here again suffers from the same thing. Okay, so it just sort of goes in one direction whichever way I'm rolling the mouse wheel. And as I said, the click points are just horrible. They really are. Then once you've set your frequency, this is your standby frequency, you then click here and it will click it to make it the active and swap them back. Same thing applies to the nav one over here. So as I said, it's kind of frustrating. You can get around that by simply holding your mouse over the actual numbers, and then it will do the scroll wheel in the right directions. Okay, you can do that. And then flick your standbys, but as I said, a little annoying with the way the click points just aren't modeled very well here. Down here with your ADF, so the ADF automatic direction finder is what picks up those NDBs that we talked about briefly in our flight planning session. Now, in terms of changing the frequency on the NDB, yeah, again, it suffers a horrible thing from the click points are just all over the shop in here. They really are. Again, you're best off actually just holding your mouse over the individual number that you want to change, which can be quite difficult as well, because where you think you're holding over it, you're not holding over it. So yeah, click points on here, little disappointing. Again, these are pretty much ported straight over from previous sims, and have inherited the bugs from said previous gauges. So yeah, long story short, they didn't remake these properly, or they didn't remake them. They just imported previous ones. You know, which I get to save time and save cost and all the rest of it. But a little disappointing that the functionality is sort of missing. Now down here, yeah. So this is your squawk code. So your identifier that ATC will see you on their air traffic control systems as. So you'd think that to set your actual setting, you'd be able to click the buttons down here. Yeah, no, you can't. Then this is the on-off, which is not working and doesn't actually do anything. So you actually have no choice. You actually have to scroll using the digits on the digital readout. So that's incredibly disappointing. So, and it's such a shame, because it really it lets it down. Like the gauges are great, the gauges are beautifully modeled and they look right, but this really lets it down. The radio stack really lets it down. So yes. The other thing as well is that you can't actually change anything down here with this wheel. So this wheel should be able to turn this dial here, just for where your ADF points. Yeah, no, doesn't actually do anything. So yeah, very, very disappointing with the avionics stack. This setup here is great. I can change the directions. These are functional. Yes, these are exactly what they should be doing. But that avionics setup just really lets it down. Really, really lets it down. Okay, all right. Moving on over here. Now, this is again. It's so beautifully modeled that these things are such a shame that they let it down. I understand that this is about making it easier for new pilots. I get that, but at the same time, it's also missing some important stuff. Okay, let's start here. So this is the fuel. So you should be able to move this. Just choose which tank you're actually going to be drawing the fuel from, or cut your fuel off completely. Yep, modeled beautifully. Detailed nicely, can't do anything with it. Again, really disappointing, because it's modeled beautifully. It should be able to do this, but you can't. Again, over here, so the carburetor heat, that works, and it does actually work in sim, as well as one to actually, it actually works physically in the cockpit. It does actually work in the sim. Very important if you're flying into colder conditions, and as we are flying out to dawn, we will turn our carb heat on. Cabin temp, it looks like you can click but it doesn't actually move, doesn't affect the sim at all. Your magnetos, unfortunately, however, bottled switches that don't work. Now that's going to lead me back over to here. So part of the start procedure of starting an aircraft, and if the aircraft's not conveniently running for you, is that you turn your magnetos on, you prime the engine, which the engine primer's there, and then you press the push to start, the starter switch. Cool. Starter switch is there. Starter switch works. Primer's there. Primer works. Magnetos don't work. Can't actually start aircraft. Yeah, slight problem with that. Slight problem. Further up here, as we move up here to have a look over here, again, light switch. Yep, my lights are on, and to prove that, we'll just go to the outside. Yep, you can see the lights are on. Yep, definitely lights all on and working. Yet, the light switch is telling me the nav lights are off. I can't click that. I can't click that at all. My avionics master switch, my battery master switch, doesn't work. Can't turn it. Can't move it. Landing lights. Can't move the switches. It's like, seriously guys, like you've gone to this beautiful detail. You've got this beautiful detail here that looks the part, and yet it doesn't work in sim. What is going on? And it's a real disappointment because it's modeled so well otherwise, and yet it's just let down by these little things, and it's just really frustrating. It's such a shame. It really is. Really disappointing. Like, really disappointing. It just... Alright, that's enough of the modelling. Let's actually take it up for a flight. Now, what we'll do is we'll bring up our little our GPS so we know what course we're flying. So we'll bring that one up here. We'll slide it down here. We might resize that a little. We'll find the little... There it is. We'll resize that one. Okay. Alright, so let's go for our flight. And let's see how she performs in the air. Alright, everything... Oop, and I moved my mixture, I pulled my mixture out too far. Oops, okay. Alright, that's better. Okay, alright. That's on we go. Alright, on the brakes. Run up the engine. Yep, all good. Nothing sluttering. Okay, off we go. Turn over here, heading towards Paris in this beautiful dawn sky. Okay, so as you saw from the takeoff there, the takeoff quite smooth. The pull sort of, is about what I'd expect it to be. I've flown a few Cubs, both traditional Cubs and Super Cubs in various incarnations in various simulators over the years, and overall I find this one to be quite good. Quite a good representation of a Cub, and it does it does feel the part. Was basically what I'm trying to allude to here, is that she's got the right responses. The Cub is a very forgiving aircraft normally, and yeah, it's why pilots have sort of trained on it for so long, for so many years, all over the world, is because of the fact that it is a forgiving aircraft. It is it is very much suited to bush flying and also to pilot training, because it is very forgiving. At the same time, I think they've grasped the performance of the aircraft quite well. She'll pitch out, and she'll pitch and trim absolutely. She'll trim out very beautifully, and you can very you get a feel for flying the aircraft, and the importance of things like trim and that kind of stuff are made quite easy with the aircraft, and the lessons that you get as part of the school there at White Waltham do give you a lot of the basics that you need, and it is a really nice aircraft to fly, and it's great for doing little sightseeing trips like this one that we're doing over here in Paris. You can see there, as I said, from the outside view, and we can sort of just see some of the reflections that we're getting on the aircraft as that sort of sun starts coming into the sky. And that's probably actually another good opportunity as well, that we can show off not just this aircraft, but we can also show off the some of the terrain. So here we are flying over Paris, and I'm getting a rock solid sort of 30 plus 30 to 60 frames here. So I'm getting a good solid performance. I'm not getting stutters or anything like that. It's just nice and clean, a very, very clean performance for my sim. Which is something that's, a lot of people sort of say, oh, if your frame rate's not 120, then it's just not doing properly, and all this kind of rubbish as well. Look, a simulator is about stability. It's about consistency. And if that means you run consistently at a usable frame rate, which is pretty much anything above 25, where anything really above 20, then it's consistent and it's stable, and it will feel good, and it will feel good and it will look good. It doesn't have to be running at 120 frames per second for it to be amazing. You've got a good solid performance. You do occasionally get a little popping in the scenery from some of the extra bits, especially some of the trees and the like. But overall, it's still nice and smooth. It's a nice smooth performance there. Oh, my rudder's doing something a little bit weird. That's my controls, not so much the model, I do believe. Wander over there towards the Eiffel Tower, I think. Get a nice flyby of the tower. But yeah, the flying of the Cub, it feels right. It really does. It just feels like it should do. It's responsive like it should be. And I think that the feeling of this Cub, it captures the Cub very, very nicely. And I don't see any issues with the flight dynamics. And I think you will find that as a budding student pilot, it'll be something that you will fall in love with. You will learn, why people love Cubs and have been flying Cubs for so long, and why the Piper Cub in its all its various forms, from the Cub to the Super Cub, and now the Carbon Cubs, which are now making their way onto the market. That it really is such a delightful aircraft to fly, and a beautiful aircraft to fly. And of course, as we're flying over here in Paris as well, we can see some of the some of the beautiful scenery, and a lot of areas in the world are modelled really, really well and really nicely, and Paris is no exception. And a lot of areas are done very nicely with some incredible detail. Got there as we're flying around the tower here. We'll turn and go a bit towards the tower here. And the textures in a lot of those buildings and textures that we see are very much the legacy of the fact that we do have the advantage of Orbix coming on board with the providing many of the textures and autogen buildings for DoveTail Games Flight School, and you can see the advantage that really does bring to our simulation. A nice view of the old Eiffel Tower there. This is also one of the great things you can do in sim that you can't do in real life. There's pretty much no way you'd ever get clearance to be able to do something like this. But in a sim, we can actually go for a quick fly past the Eiffel Tower and enjoy the scenery. So the overall, as like you said, the overall performance of the Cub is quite good. I think that you know, it may not model some of the things that we might for those who have been simming for quite a while, they might be used to in, say, something like the A2A Cub, for example. But still, it captures the essence of what the Cub is and how the Cub operates very, very nicely and very, very well. That's something good. But the issue, as I was saying before, that what this model's really let down by, is the fact that a lot of the functionality of the cockpit of the aircraft, such as things like the cold and dark starts, you can't do a full cold and dark start in this aircraft simply because a lot of the buttons and switches simply don't have their correct functions, have not been modeled, which is, as I said, such a shame and really just sort of lets a few things down. I'm just going to change this one a little bit here. Alright. Nope, okay, hang on, let me do it. There we go. Heading it over to our airport there, so we're going to come in and land. So as you see, we're going to be joining into a we'll join into a left-hand circuit. So we'll join the go into the parallel and join our downwind for a left-hand circuit, and come in on the circuit, and we'll land there at Lima Foxtrot Papa Victor for this one. We'll see if we can remember all the things that we learnt in our lessons as we come in. So yeah, I definitely feel that the overall modelling of the Cub is quite good. The GPS 295, I know it's kind of appropriate to this one, but the GPS 295's always annoyed me. It really always has, and I've never been a particularly huge fan of it. So yes, I much prefer the 500 unit. But yeah, the 295 unit can be a little bit challenging with the fact that how it loads and how it reads its data and stuff like that, so it can be quite annoying. I'll turn on our downwind leg now. I'll bring the throttle back a little bit. So a nice shallow descent as we head down. Start throttling back. I'll turn onto our base leg now. As you can see as well from all the traffic on you can see they've got, of course, the traffic on the roads, that it is a living world. It's not a dead world. It does have, it does have, vehicular traffic on the roads, and it does have, you can see on the little flashing text over there in the difference, there is aerial traffic as well. So, it is a living world. So for those who are concerned that there was going to be nothing around, it was just going to be a dead world with only you in it and nothing else. No, it is a living world. It does still maintain some of the living world elements. You're not going to see any big tube liners and stuff going into these airports. The air traffic is limited to only Cherokees and Cubs. But yeah, it is still a living world. Alright. It does capture the ballooning effect of the cub that the cub can have using its flaps. Coming in there. Well, bit of a bounce. Not too bad. Now, once you do get back on the ground, that's probably something that I didn't mention before, is that you saw in the little top right there, little reminder letting me know that the number of flight hours I've just logged. So, the interesting thing about this is the fact that the flight hours that you log, you only actually log any flight hours when you actually land again on an airport. If you don't actually land again at an airport, then the hours you've flown will not count. So if you end your flight, if you end your flight mid-flight, and you don't go on the ground, then any of the hours that you've spent in the air will not count towards you actually, count towards your logbook. So, and therefore won't count towards your actual license. So, if you are building up some time for your logbook before you can take your check ride, just bear that in mind that you can't just sort of fly around for a little bit and then just quit your flight. You actually do need to put it down on an airport, because you can't just leave your aircraft in the middle of the sky. So I actually kind of appreciate and kind of like the fact that you have to do that. Yeah, I kind of appreciate that and think that's kind of good. Alright, we're just going to scoot over here to the tower and park ourselves up. One of the classic things about tail draggers, of course, is the fact that it's hard sometimes to see over the cockpit. That's why you often see them sort of wheeling around a little bit on the tarmac. It's all they're doing is they're actually just trying to see over the engine if they can't lean out. I think we might we'll park up here on the grass and just by the control tower. I think that sounds like a good idea. Slow down here a little bit. Excuse me, coming through. There we go. Okay, roll the flaps back up. And we'll just wind our mixture down and cut the engine. Okay. That's and of course, as I said, one animation that has, which of course is the door opening there on the outside there. So look, as I said, the Cub, the Super Cub, I think is very beautifully modelled. Flight modelling wise, I do enjoy it. I think it is quite accurate. I think it is quite accurate from the ones that, I've never flown a real Cub myself. I've never personally hand flown a real Cub. I've flown many a simulated Cub, and I think that DoveTail Games got this one right. I think they very much got this right. My main issue is the fact that the modelling and the flight dynamics are let down by the little things, like the fact that it's not, the basic switches. You can't do cold and dark starts because a lot of the switches on the inside just simply aren't. They're modelled, they're physically modelled, but their functionality hasn't been assigned, and that's, as I said, quite disappointing. Alright, so that wraps up our little test flight in the Cub today. So what we're going to do is we're going to now to end your flight. Once you're on the ground and you're ready to end your flight, simply you press escape, and it'll bring up this little option, this pause menu here, there, let you know that you're paused. And you can do a couple of things. You can restart your flight and go back to the beginning. You can save the flight in the current state you're at. So if you do need to disappear in midair, you can save it and then land it later. You can replay the last 30 seconds that you've just flown around. access the settings menu, or you can finish your flight. So we can finish here. So we're going to finish this one. So we're going to, you can resume your flight by clicking the bottom right here, or up here by the pause sign. You can click here and you can end your flight. And it'll ask you confirmation. Are you sure you want to quit your flight? And you can go, yes, I do want to quit my flight. And it goes little end flight here. It goes, congratulations, you completed the flight. Well, okay, I'm kind of assumed I did. And that your objectives completed was land at LPV. So this objectives completed list is based on the number of the airports that you list as your waypoints or destinations. And you do have to land at each airport that you nominate. We might cover that off in a bit more when we look at the old Cherokee. Alrighty, so well, that pretty much wraps up our Cub flight. So let's finish that one up here by pressing continue. And with that, we go back to the flight planning screen and we go back to our home airport there. So now it's time for our flight in, of course, in the Cherokee. So what we need to do is we need to return to our hangar. So we need to head back to our hangar. We need to change over to the Cherokee. So let's change that one to let's go something different. Let's fly the red stripes. I don't want to do the red stripes from this one today. All right, so we can select our. So we've selected our aircraft, so our color scheme. So this is the PA-28 Piper Cherokee. So we're going to plan our flight with this aircraft. So again, we've landed here at home airport. So where should we fly this time? Where should we fly? Where should we fly? You know what? I've always enjoyed a flight around Hong Kong. Let's go down to here. Setkong. I always loved Setkong. Got to visit there when Hong Kong was still a British territory. Got to visit, spend a bit of time at Setkong. So I'm going to take off from here. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to set this up with weather to show off something that kind of frustrates me as well. Now, some of you may sort of say, okay, what about if I just want to go for a fly? I don't want to set a flight plan. That's okay. You don't have to set a flight plan. That's actually one of the great things. So if you don't want to set a flight plan, you just want to see where the winds and your virtual skies take you, you can simply left click on the airfield to start the process and then immediately right click. And now all you need to do then, that's perfectly okay. It will throw up a warning when we start this flight, but yeah, that is actually perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You can simply check the flight, check the airport, and that's it. We'll go for where the winds take us. We'll go for we might even do a circuit around Setkong and come for a landing, because I know Setkong can be quite challenging because of the mountains around it. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to set some weather here though. We're going to set some building storms. Because I know that means so it gives us a bit more challenge when it comes to the weather and the like. Now we'll do this one. We'll do a dusk. Actually, yeah, we'll do a dusk flight. I might make it 17. It'd be so much easier if I could just type a number in here. So much easier. Alright, it's just the start of dusk. Let's do that one. Okay, alright, sounds like a plan. Alright, let's do that. So, we set that one, we set our weather. We're just going to go from Setkong. We'll just do a circuit around Setkong, I think. Alright, so let's, once again, let's log our plan. Now, pop up there, because I haven't chosen a destination airport, it'll throw up this little warning. In order to gain credit for the flight time, you must land at an airport. Fair enough, okay. Probably should always just throw that, it probably should throw that warning out anyway, just, whether you've got a flight plan or not. But yeah, it's interesting that it's only triggered when you haven't actually set a destination airport. Alright, so we're going to go that one, just go OK for that. Wait for everything to load in. Alright, and here we are at Setkong. Okay, so alright, once again, the external modeling is quite good. It really is, and it's a bit darker now, so you don't have as much of the sun reflection off the paneling, but you can still see that the exterior modelling is absolutely beautifully well done. It really is. So you got a nice, impressive detail. You know, all the way through to the the latches on the engine cowling. So it is a really beautifully detailed external model. Yeah, it is absolutely stunning. Unfortunately, though, it just like the Super Cub, it is let down a little bit by some of the interior modelling and the lack of functionality of some of the parts of it. So. Yeah, we're not going to spend too much time. As I said, I think the external modelling is really, really well done. Now, something I wanted to take note of here. So we've got runway 11 here. And then we're going to check our weather in a second, and we'll check our winds, and we're going to see where that correlates to in terms of the actual takeoff runway that we should be using. So remember that the opposite of this is 29. So it's always 180 degrees opposite. So you've got 11, and we've got 29. So that's the runway that we're on. Now let's have a look at the. Let's unpause our flight, and go past our pre-flight, and we'll check our weather. Alright, so we'll bring up our Shift Z. Okay, so we can see that our winds are out of 231. And we're trying to take off of 11. Anybody else figuring the problem of this one? So this basically shows us that we've been placed in a position where we shouldn't be taking off from this runway. And it really goes to highlight what I was saying before when we started off in the Cub, where the system that it's got just simply goes, oh yep, I'll just pick the top runway from the list. I'm sorry, no, that is not how it works. An aircraft takes off into wind, and it's not like this is variable wind and it could be getting incorrect information coming in from a live weather update that may or may not be accurate. This is coming in from a preset weather condition. The sim knows exactly what weather, exactly what winds it's setting because it sets it globally. I'm sorry, what the actual hell is going on here? This is extremely unimpressive. And I'm really, really disappointed with this. I really am. Because this is about teaching, new pilots and, some of us older pilots giving us a good refresher course on some things. And that's really just blatantly wrong. It really is. And it's so disappointing to see that it's something as simple as that, as go choose the active runway that it should be based on the weather conditions. Come on, guys. What are you doing? Really disappointing. Alright. So, what I'm going to do is let's have a look around the cockpit first before we taxi down the end of the runway and take off the correct direction before coming in for our approach. Alright, so cockpit-wise modelling. Alright, so the modelling again visually is quite good. I think visually it is quite good. It's laid out correctly. Everything is where it should be. So we've got all the basic 6 that we expect. We've got our navigation 1 and 2. Now, this is good because so nav 1, nav 2. So you've got 2 sets of nav and comm radios in the Piper Cherokee. As we only had the 1 in the Super Cub, but we've got 2 in the Cherokee. And so they are set independently. So your nav radios up the top here, which do suffer from the exact same issues that we saw in the Cub. So the click points for the radio here are horrible. But they set to nav 1 and nav 2 radios. So your nav 1 will also accept an ILS frequency, and your nav 2 just doesn't. It's just directional. So yeah, disappointing with that one. Okay, now what is interesting about this, and this is where I get a little bit confused here. So, alright, starting our aircraft. So down here, you've got the key ignition, okay? This works now. Now, in the version that I was testing and I did the preview series in, this didn't work. It does now work. But the problem is, though, is that your battery and alternator switches, which are here, don't function. So if I was to shut this aircraft down now using the key, and you know what, let's do that. Let's do that. So let's shut it down. Oh, shut down off. I can't actually turn my anything off because of the fact that these switches don't work. So I can't actually shut the aircraft down properly or start it from a cold and dark state because the battery's on. Now, if you leave this sit long enough, the battery will run out. And then you've got to completely close your flight down and you abandon all the rest of it. So again, a really frustrating point. It's like it's half finished and very disappointing. Like really disappointing, that one. So yeah, it's just frustrating. Though in this one though, the fuel it does. Here's the weird part of this one though, is the fact that the fuel selector, if you hover your mouse over it, it'll get the little tooltip over there and you can scroll through and tell it, which tank you want it to use, left, right, both, or fuel cutoff. But the actual physical model thing doesn't move. Like, why? Why is this so? Anyway, so yeah. A lot of little frustrating things here. Now I was going to crack the throttle a little bit. Okay, and there's a problem there. So the key switch, it'll work to shut the engine down, but it won't actually start the engine. Like, you can shut it down using the key, but you can't start the engine using the key. You have to use the keyboard shortcut. Like, what the hell? Like, seriously, what's going on, guys? What? Why? Just so much why here. Alright. Anyway, I'm going to whack the carb heat on because we are sort of running a bit of a cooler temperature. Now, some of these switches do work, so the fuel pump switch does work. Your landing light switch does work. However, that again is something to point out. So the landing light switch is on, and it's dark enough that you'd be able to see that on the tarmac, but guess what? You can't see it on the tarmac. Like, the light doesn't illuminate the ground. Like, this is a 64-bit system here, guys. Like, you pride yourself on a 64-bit system. Why is this not lit up? Like, what? Why? I don't understand. As I said, like, I really want to support this title, and there are elements of this title which are really good, but it's let down by this quite a lot. So we're going to turn our pitot heat on as well, and we're just going to turn the instrument panel lighting on as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't illuminate our gauges, but at least it illuminates the cockpit. Alright, okay. So, and of course, now we have to taxi down the other end of the runway so we can actually take off correctly. So we're going to do that. So, again, it's really frustrating with the fact that, the model here is visually quite stunning and quite impressive. But the actual execution of it internally is really lacking. It really is. Like, the way it interfaces in the sim is really, really disappointing. And it's just really frustrating that such obvious things have been missed. And I'm just really disappointed by it, and it's kind of scary that as I said, I really want to support DoveTail because I think that that they're off to they've got some great ideas, and they seem to be taking things in the right direction. But this is their first foray into flight sims, so a little bit of forgiving. I'll be a little forgiving, but this is basic stuff that it just seems to have been missed, like completely missed. And yeah, it's really disappointing that that's the way it's ended up. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to get down here, then we're going to turn around. Don't want to taxi too fast. Probably going a little bit too fast than I should anyway, but anyway. Want to go onto the grass a little bit. Probably should hook that turn out a little bit more. Okay, now that we're facing the right part of the runway, 1-notch flaps for takeoff. Brakes on. Engine clear. Alright. And rolling. A little bit of rudder to counter the torque factor of the prop. Up and climbing. We're just climbing out here before we go into our circuit. The just probably one thing to put on. So I brought up the you saw me bring up the GPS before with using the Shift 3. So again, same GPS fitted to this aircraft as well. Actually, you know what? Instead of doing it for circuit, we might head out to the new Hong Kong International. We might do that. We might head over these, get a bit of altitude, and we'll start turning over to the left here, I think. So, yeah, Shift 3 to bring up your GPS. Now, you then got your radios as well. So again, these are common across both of these aircraft. Shift 4 will essentially bring up a 2D version of the in-sim radios. And then Shift 5 will bring up your Radio 2 stack. And Shift 6 will bring up your DME information. 7 will bring up your ADF. And 8 will bring up your squawk. Again, unfortunately, just as actually in the actual virtual cockpit, the buttons don't work on your on this one on your squawk. The ADF, again, it's sort of like the the actual sort of bearing thing here. It's very finicky when it comes to what it's picking. Actually, what it will do is it'll scroll through, but it will only scroll through using the decimals. You can't do anything else unless you hover your mouse over the number to actually change the other numbers. So yeah, a little disappointing with that one. So yes. Anyway, and then with your radios here, it will cycle through, but through the individual kilohertz. Okay, all the way through. Otherwise, it's put your mouse over the number and actually scroll it that way. So, yeah, again, a little disappointing with the way some of the execution goes. And I said it's really disappointing because it's like the model is so beautiful and so well done, and yet is just so incredibly let down by other factors of this actual title, and it's just really disappointing. Just gonna lean my mixture a bit there. Oh, pitching a bit high. Pitch under control. Okay, what we might do is one other thing that we'll do in this flight as well, we'll show off some of the ATC. So yes, there is ATC in here. It's done using this sort of this interesting work on sort of like a voice text to speech generator. So what we might do is we'll tune into Hong Kong International, Hong Kong Tower, go full
Hong
stop.
Kong Tower. Piper, November 7210 Whiskey is 9 miles northeast with hotel to land.
Piper, November 7210 Whiskey, Hong Kong Tower. Make straight in, runway 25R, QNH 989er.
Make straight in, runway 25R, Piper 10 Whiskey.
Alright, so we're going to be, we've been vectored to do approach to do 25 right. You can see over there, and you can see some of the other traffic in the pattern there. So we're going to be joining we'll join in, we'll hook into to final down this way. So we're going to 500 feet per minute descent rate there. Throttle back a little bit. So we can configure ourselves for a landing. So the in-sim ATC is interesting. Like, it's got a varied voices, and it uses a text-to-speech system, which is it's interesting, but it does give some quirks every now and again. DoveTail have said it's an experimental system at the moment. They're still working on it, so it does have some quirks every now and again. Like, it'll when you expect it to give you a lemur or a niner or something, it'll just give it to you normally.
10 Whiskey, cleared to land. Runway 25R. Piper 065, cleared to land. Runway 25R. Follow the aircraft on final.
Cleared to land. Runway 25 R. Piper 10 Whiskey.
So there'll be the other one there coming through there.
Land. Runway 25R. Piper 065.
So yeah, the ATC does work. It is a little clunky from time to time, but overall, it's still not too bad. Not too bad. Okay. Come in here on the old 2.5. I think one thing that you probably noticed as well, there was always a lot of concern when people sort of saw the early screenshots of Flight School, and even the preview videos that I did, that was going to be the blue sim, as it were. We're always going to be feeling blue whenever we looked at the sky. But I think you can see that from these ones that the sky colours are quite nice and reasonably well done, and there's not as much of that blue as we saw in the early screenshots. So yeah, I think that there's a lot's been done since then, and I think overall, visually the sim looks really, really nice. It's a little distressing that I find that some of the things that I feel are really important for beginner flight simmers, and for those of us who've been flight simming for a while, but we could occasionally do with a refresher course. Sometimes actually, they just sort of miss a few steps every now and again, which is, as I said, it's a real shame.
Piper 10 Whiskey, turn next taxiway.
Clean up the aircraft, as we got our little flight logging information up there.
Piper 10 Whiskey, contact ground on 121.6.
Thank you very much. Thank you, good day.
1.6. Piper 10 Whiskey.
Ground, and let's taxi to parking.
Hong Kong ground.
See, this is how I know there's parking, and that's why there's no excuse for that whole starting at airport
Taxi
thing.
to parking.
Piper November 7210 Whiskey. Taxi to General Aviation Parking using taxiway Alpha Niner Alpha Whiskey Victor 4 Victor Hotel 6 Juliet 5 Kilo 3 Kilo Zulu 3.
That's going to be a really long taxi.
Taxi into General Aviation Parking using taxiway Alpha 9 Alpha Whiskey Victor 4 Victor Hotel 6 Juliet, Juliet 5, Kilo 3, Kilo Zulu 3, Piper 1, 0, Whiskey.
That's a really long taxi we're about to do, isn't it? Yeah. You know what? I think I might cut that taxi short. You know what? Actually, you know what? Let's do it so you guys can see it. So yeah, it does actually work. As I said, this is how you know that there are actual parking spaces at the airports here in the sim. So, which is why it frustrates me, and I feel it. You know, it really sort of concerns me a great deal with the fact that they just seem to cop out with the whole parking. You know, starting your flight. Starting at the runway. Not only starting at the wrong ways, but starting at the wrong runway as well. Like that's just really frustrating because a lot of the larger airports do have parking available, and and it does and this in sim ATC, so the sim knows the right runway it should be using for the right weather conditions, all the rest of it. So yeah, to have you start on the runway. Look, I get part of it because especially for newer pilots, and as I said, you're just learning to find your feet in the sim, and you may not be fully comfortable. Stuffed up that taxi, talking too much.
Hong Kong, Piper Bravo 0065, taxi to parking. Piper Bravo 0065. Taxi to General Aviation Parking using taxiway Alpha Niner Alpha Whiskey Victor unform.
Yeah, unform comes as uniform comes as unform. Yeah, that's not good.
Taxiway Alpha Niner Alpha Whiskey Victor 1 unform Piper 065.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna cut this short because otherwise I'm gonna keep getting my train of thought distracted with doing that, and I do want to wrap it up to this one. So let's end our flight there. So we've done here, so we can scope here, and then again, just as before, we go end flight, go to post-flight screen, and we want to quit our flight. So this shows an interesting little one here. So you know how we sort of just had our start airport and that was it, okay? The objectives completed thing. If you don't land at an airport that you specify in your flight plan, it will just say you failed that particular objective, even though you completed the flight, but it says you failed an objective. So, not sure how that's working for them, but yeah, interesting little quirk for that one. So yeah, interesting little quirk. All right, let's finish this one up, and let's go on to our final thoughts. I think we'll go for another little flight. Alright, this is pretty much now down to the finals. Okay, so we've had a look at everything. We've had a look at all the aircraft. We've had a look at the different elements of DoveTail Games Flight School. What's my overall thoughts? And we're going to have just some footage in the background of me flying a random flight as we give my final thoughts. Okay, so my final thoughts are DoveTail Games Flight School is... Well, let's start off by saying it's DoveTail Games' first foray into flight simulation on its own. So, yes, they're the curators of the Steam edition of Flight Simulator 10, but this is their first sort of foray into sort of producing their own. Now, yes, there are lots of elements. It's borrowed a hell of a lot of stuff from FSX. It really has. But this is pitched at new users, new virtual pilots who want to see if virtual aviation is for them. So, bearing that in mind, is Flight School a good title and worth picking up? On balance, I'm going to say yes. Yes, it is worth it. With some caveats. So, for you new virtual aviators who are not sure if this genre is for you, if your previous idea of flight simulation was something like Tom Clancy's Hawk X or Wings of Prey, Arcade Edition or War Thunder or something like that. Okay, this shows you the other side of flight simulation, which is the civilian side. It's not about blowing stuff up. It's about actually mastering flying. And the core, what the lessons teach you, the skills the lessons teach you, are really important lessons. They are derived from actual real world courses. So they are a condensed version of the real world, the syllabus for doing those two license types. So getting into that, add on to the fact that you get the whole globe included with this. This isn't just 100 square miles that you can fly around in, or a very sort of closed environment that you can have in. That makes this quite a good title, quite a good launching point for you to see if you are if you are interested in this genre, and if you want to explore it more, because it's an entry point for you, and for that it serves quite well. It does. It's got its issues. As the new user, you probably won't notice a lot of the issues that I notice. You won't notice a lot of the controller bugs. You won't. You'll be a bit forgiving of the fact that you can't do a cold and dark start, though I find that a bit unforgivable personally. So for you, the new user, for you, the new virtual pilot, DoveTail Games Flight School is not a bad investment. $15, you get the whole world to play with. You get all the conditions that can throw at you to try out. You get great lessons on the basics of how to aviate, and that's really, really good. You get 2 reasonably good quality aircraft included with this one. A third one you wish you'll get for free. Possibly it might already be out by the time you're watching this video. The downside, the cons for you as the new aviator is that the lessons are just the lessons. There's no additional reading material. There's no additional links for where to explore more. So I think that's its downside. Now, some of you might be saying, oh, but I can't fly an A380, or I can't fly a 777, oh, I can't fly an F-16 Fighting Falcon. I'm sorry, but everybody who flies those aircraft started in aircraft just like these. Okay? So, think of it like that. If you want to get behind the stick of an F-16, if you want to get behind the yoke of an A380 or a 777, you are going to start in an aircraft just like a Piper Super Cub, just like a Piper Cherokee. And you are going to learn the basic lessons just like you do here in flight school. So in terms of, in that regard, this is actually a really good title for you as a new virtual aviator. So I would definitely recommend it for you to try, because it's a relatively inexpensive investment to find out if this genre is going to be for you. That's pretty much that's pretty much the bottom line. So for you, the new virtual aviator, I think it is a great title for you. Now, for those of us who, for new virtual aviators, probably switch off now. For those of you like me who've been flight simming for quite a while, it's a different story. On balance, flight school's not an investment for you. The flight training and the missions and the lessons, I think you would get value out of. I think you would, and if you would be willing to drop $15 on a on a 10-12 mission pack, then you know what, go pick this up because the lessons are good. The lessons are overall a reasonably good quality, and they give us a refresher course on some of the things that, especially those who press buttons and do tube liners a lot and don't necessarily fly more basic aircraft a lot. There's a lot of refreshers in here that are actually going to be of quite good use to you. They really are. Beyond that, though, but if you're not the kind of person who buys a mission pack, or and you don't want to do the lessons, then probably this is not going to be for you. Because there's not going to be a huge, and I only say that because there's not a huge advantage over what you've already got. So if you've already got a decked out ESP based simulator, so Flight Simulator 10 Box Edition, Steam Edition, Lockheed Martin's Prepared 3D, you've already got what this can do, and probably better. But yeah, and you've got your personalized aircraft. You got the aircraft that you like to fly in it. So yeah, I think that this is, yeah, then this may not be for you. But yeah, if you're looking at just a refresher course in a reasonably well structured manner, because as because we know where to find the additional information, the additional reasons behind stuff. So that's what So the lack of information and extra reading in the lessons is probably not such a big deal for an experienced virtual aviator. But as I said, the lessons as a refresher course, I would still say are worth the $15. I still would say they're worth it, and it'd be interesting to see DoveTail Games use this as an experimentation. They hinted at Flight SimCon that they are intending to use Flight School as a bit of an experimental platform. So this is where they're going to start experimenting with things that we may or may not see in the future flight simulator. So it's still, again, it may not be a bad thing for you to think about picking up. So just an idea for you guys. So there you go. Alright, so overall, TLDR version, new virtual aviator. If you're not sure if this genre is for you, this is worth picking up. It's worth the $15 for you to find out. It's a $15 way to figure out, is virtual aviation for you. For experienced simmers, I still think the lessons as a refresher course are worth it. So are definitely worth considering getting. So overall, it's got its bugs. It's got its bugs for those of us with extra hardware, but on balance, I still think it comes out ahead. Only just, but I think it comes out ahead. Alright, this has been my long-awaited for review video of DoveTail Games Flight School. Thank you very much for sticking with me throughout this lengthy journey. Or if you just shortcut it straight to the TLDR version, then, thanks for at least listening to my last opinions, but I would suggest that you consider going back and watching how I came to those conclusions. Alright folks, thanks very much for joining me. Don't forget, as always, to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying these videos and want to see more, and of course, as always, you can catch up with me and all the things I'm up to between videos by finding me on Facebook and on Twitter. Just search NovaWing24. Alright folks, thanks very much for watching. Take care, safe skies to all, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.